A Nigerian Instagram influencer who posted pictures of his lavish lifestyle could spend the next 20 years in a prison cell.
Hushpuppi was a millionaire Instagram influencer, successful enough to bag gifts from Fendi, Gucci, and Louis Vuitton. They even sent him custom cakes on his birthday. He was living the dream until, in 2020, a SWAT team kicked down his door as he slept and seized absolutely everything: his cars, his cash, and a list of his victims' email addresses. Yes, all 2 million of them. This is the story of Hushpuppi and the mistake that cost him more than 10 years of his life behind bars.
Dubai police have once again solved yet another case involving an international online scammer known as Raymond Abbas, but who goes by Hushpuppi on social media platforms.
Previous year, he'd given an MTV Crib-style tour of his home to radio personality Daddy Freeze. As they gazed at his hordes of designer clothes, Rolls Royces, Ferraris, and no less than 4 jacuzzis, he described the feelings he had about his incredible wealth. "My heart is pure. I sleep good at night. When something good happens to me, I know it's because I did good, not because somebody promised me money that I did not work for, or money that I don't deserve." But what was this work that he was always so cagey about? How did a poor kid from Lagos become a self-professed billionaire Gucci master? And how was he brought down by Instagram and Snapchat? Hushpuppi's real name is Ramon Abbas, and he was raised in poverty in Lagos, Nigeria. His father was a taxi driver, and his mother sold bread on the street. Growing up with very little, he coveted wealth and luxury. And when he was old enough, he began a small business reselling designer clothes from the boot of his car. In the early 2000s, cyber cafes began appearing across Nigeria, and the unemployed youth flocked to them, first for entertainment, but soon as a way to make money through online crimes like check cashing and romance scams. The young men used free Yahoo email accounts to run their cons, earning them the nickname Yahoo Boys. They would spend hours online in search of magus, meaning gullible marks, and then days, weeks, or months conning them out of their cash. With few other prospects, Abbas became a keen Yahoo boy, and he soon found success. But then, the Nigerian security forces began cracking down viciously on cybercrime, often beating first and asking questions later. Any young man with a smartphone became a target. So, in 2014, Abbas, along with many other Yahoo boys, fled to Malaysia, a country with more sophisticated internet architecture and law enforcement that was a little laxer against potential cyber criminals. There, he strived to be the best, and his drive and entrepreneurial spirit propelled him to the top of the game. At this point, he became Hushpuppi. Hushpuppi was Abbas's Instagram handle, and he used it to flaunt his wealth and post motivational messages about breaking out of poverty with time and hard work. As his profits skyrocketed, he splashed his cash on designer clothes, luxury watches, and expensive cars. It was rare to see a post that didn't come with a hashtag for Gucci, Fendi, Versace, or Rolls-Royce. His bio read "Billionaire Gucci Master," and the more he flaunted his newfound wealth, the faster he gained followers. At his peak, over 2.8 million people were viewing his posts about his custom purple Rolls-Royce, his flights on private jets, and his Fendi shopping sprees. In Nigeria, he'd become a celebrity, and at peak influencer status, his beloved designer brands started gifting him everything from trainers to an all-expenses-paid trip to the Ritz, Paris as a VIP guest of Louis Vuitton. Fendi invited him to dine with society's elite, and in one event, the Kuala Lumpur branch of Versace hosted him and fellow Instagrammer Samson Oyokunle and presented them with gifts for being the store's best customers. Abbas celebrated by spending another $20,000 and posting it all on his Instagram. Around the same time, he got close with another influencer, Ismaila Mustafa, known as Momfa. Together they showed off their wealth and designer gear and were even mentioned in the song "Living Things" by Nice. Of course, no one can be a true influencer without getting pulled into a few online feuds. Some seemed staged, like his fallout with musician Davido over an accusation that Abbas had skipped out on his tab at a bar in Lagos. but the pair soon made up in a Snapchat video, and each was rewarded with a boost in followers. Not all of his spats ended so well though, and in some cases, they threatened to expose him. In one event, he accused rapper Fino of wearing fake watches. This prompted singer Casey to post, "You have no credibility, no known source of income, and yet you come on social media to attack hardworking Nigerian musicians with traceable wealth. Really, what do you do for a living? What is your talent? How did you make your money? What brand do you represent?" Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission needs to start paying more attention to detail. Abbas had shared every trip, meal, and shopping spree with his dedicated followers, but of course, he never shared exactly how he'd achieved his extravagant lifestyle, and when questioned, he always said something vague about real estate investment. No one was buying the story, but how was he making his cash? Romance scams can be good for a few thousand, maybe even six figures, but Abbas was clearly pulling in millions. The true source of his wealth was business email compromise schemes, or BECS. Like many others, Abbas had realized the real money in online fraud wasn't in scamming individuals, but multi-million-dollar companies. These crimes are so lucrative that they account for over 40% of funds stolen through fraud and cost $1.8 billion annually. Despite this, we don't hear about BECS in the news very often, usually because it's incredibly embarrassing for the companies involved. A typical BEC scam involves hacking into a corporate email address. This can be done through phishing or even guessing at passwords if the company has very lax security measures. Then the scammer will watch and wait for weeks or months until a large invoice comes in. At this point, they can intercept the invoice and mock up a near identical one, with the bank details changed to those of their own account. Alternatively, they can email the intended recipients from an almost identical address, apologizing that the previous account details were incorrect and providing new ones leading to the scammer's account. They may also create fake websites, businesses, phone hotlines, and identities, all as a way to convince anyone who may run security checks that the details are legit. Once the money hits the scam account, it's then quickly redistributed to multiple mule accounts, converted into Bitcoin, or used to buy physical goods like jewelry or gold. This launders the money and prevents victims from calling back the funds. For example, in 2019, a New York law firm needed to send a payment of around $922,000 to a client who'd refinanced a piece of real estate. Before wiring the money, a paralegal emailed to confirm where it should be sent. Unknown to her, this email was intercepted, and she soon received a fax telling her to send the money to a different account. Naturally, she checked to make sure it was legit by ringing the number on the fax. Her call was answered, and the man on the other end was able to confirm all of the confidential details. Convinced, she sent the money to the new account, which of course didn't belong to her client, but to Abbas. The person she'd spoken to had been one of his associates, or perhaps the man himself. Crimes of this scale can't be run by an individual. They involve an entire network of scammers, some to set up false bank accounts, some to create fake websites, some to gain access to the email accounts, and others to launder the money. Plus, you need money mules, who are often unwitting people tricked into setting up laundering accounts through romance scams. Abbas, as one of the most successful BEC scammers, had a huge number of connections, including a Canadian money launderer called Galeb Alamari. He was normally responsible for transferring the cash into Abbas's account and worked with him on some of his largest scams. Their most high-profile heist was that of the Bank of Valletta in Malta, where, communicating through Snapchat and Abbas's Hushpuppi 5 account, the pair attempted to organize the distribution of 13 million euros. A scam had been pulled off by hackers who'd breached the French stock exchange regulator, Autorité des Marchés Financiers. Then, posing as the regulators, they sent phishing emails to the Maltese bank. When an employee fell for it, the team gained access to the bank's secure payments system and was able to send out millions of euros in undetected payments. Abbas's role was to provide bank accounts able to receive the deposits of millions of dollars without blocks, and then quickly launder it before it was recalled. Fortunately, this time, Abbas and his fellow money movers weren't able to move the millions quickly enough, and the bank was able to recover most of the missing funds. When the story hit the news, Alameri took a screenshot and sent it to Abbas. He replied simply, "Damn." Not to be put off, Alameri sent back, "Next one is in a few weeks. We'll let you know when it's ready." Too bad they caught on, or it would have been a nice payout. Similarly unfazed, Abbas took to Instagram the next day, posing head-to-toe in Fendi and leaning on a $160,000 sports car. "Bought myself a new Bentley Bentayga for Valentine's. The best way to celebrate the season of love." Unfortunately for Abbas, not everyone in his network was as laid back as he and Alameri. In another scam, he'd been working with a Kenyan entrepreneur named Juma to con a Qatari business person out of $1.1 million. This person had hoped to set up a new school in Qatar and needed a $15 million loan to fund the project. As this was just a bit more than his local bank was willing to lend, he hired a financial advisor who promptly Googled million-dollar loans and landed on Juma's scam website. Together, Juma and Abbas assumed false identities and spent months convincing the businessman that they could arrange the loan for various six-figure fees. Every time their victim became worried about the money not materializing, Abbas and Juma would double down and demand yet more cash, which would finally release the loan. In a final ploy, they hired Vincent Chibuzu to set up a fake Wells Fargo website and automated hotline. When the businessman rang it, he was informed that the $15 million was finally in his account, and he was over the moon. However, he was soon brought back down to earth when Abbas requested a $575,000 withholding tax to get the money out of the U.S. At this point, Chibuzu started petitioning for a larger share. When Abbas shut him down, he went to the client and exposed the scam. Naturally, Abbas was more than a little upset, so he messaged a man named Abba Kyari, saying he wanted Chibuzu to go through the most serious beating of his life. What was interesting about this is that Kyari wasn't a thug. He was Nigeria's multi-award-winning deputy police commissioner, otherwise known as Super Cop, the shining example of competence and incorruptibility within a heavily criticized system. But Abbas's message wasn't history's worst mistext. He'd actually intended to request a beating for hire from the Super Cop and followed up with, "Please, sir, I want to spend money to send this boy to jail. Let him go for a very long time." Shockingly, Kyari was more than happy to oblige and replied with the details of a Nigerian bank account. When the money arrived, he arrested Chibuzu and sent a picture of him locked up. He even updated Abbas after Chibuzu's girlfriend arrived with a bribe to have him freed. "They were thinking it's a normal arrest. That is why they think money can remove him," he wrote. "No money can remove him here. Ha 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 ha." The ironic thing about Abbas is that as a money launderer, his job was to make cash look as if it came from a legitimate source. But this was something he massively overlooked in his own life. His pursuit of likes and desire to show off his newfound wealth meant that flaunting it on Instagram was just too tempting, and among his 2.8 million followers were more than a few agents working to bring him down. Unsurprisingly, the FBI had become suspicious that the source of Hushpuppi's fortune wasn't legit. But they didn't really know who he was. That was until his birthday, when he posted a picture of the gifted cake he received from Gucci. Armed with his date of birth, agents were able to track him to a visa application, which led to his true identity and a much clearer look at his finances. It quickly became obvious that he was a prolific money launderer, and they placed him under surveillance, hoping to gather something concrete to use for his arrest. Ultimately, the crime that brought him down was one of his most successful: the payout from the New York law firm. After the $922K hit the Chase bank account in October 2019, Abbas worked quickly to split it up, sending $396,000 to a Canadian account. Then, he asked Alameri to confirm that it had arrived. Alameri replied that it had, but his plane had just landed, and he'd have to wait until he had a good enough signal to send a screenshot. Then, just moments later, as he walked into the airport, the FBI descended on him, and he was placed under arrest. The next day, Abbas's old friend Momfa was also arrested at a Nigerian airport by the EFCC and charged with fraud and money laundering. At this point, Abbas should have disappeared. After all, The FBI now had full access to Alamary's Snapchat, which was full of evidence and directly linked to rayhushpuppi@gmail.com. But incredibly, he seemed unconcerned and continued posting pictures of Fendi bags and hot tubs to his Instagram. His only evasive tactic was to change his bio from billionaire Gucci master to real estate developer. Meanwhile, the FBI began coordinating with the UAE authorities near where Abbas was staying and launched surveillance. Then, on June 8, 2020, while Abbas was sleeping, a Dubai SWAT team flooded into his apartment, placed him under arrest, and seized 47 phones, 21 laptops, $7 million worth of luxury cars, $40 million, and the email addresses of 2 million potential victims. The Dubai authorities were so pleased with the successful haul that they released a short, stylized film of the arrest entitled Operation Fox Hunt 2. Soon, Abbas was flown to Chicago, where he stood trial in November 2022. He pleaded guilty to his crimes against the Qatari businessperson, the Maltese bank, and several others that amounted to over $24 million. He was sentenced to 135 months in federal prison and ordered to pay over $1.7 million in restitution. Officials described him as, quote, one of the most prolific money launderers in the world, and his longtime doubters gloated, the cops got a nice sneaker collection now, and no more Gucci in jail.